Oh, hey, good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are in this vast land of ours. I'm Tamara Ugolini, and I am going to be your host today for Rebel Roundup. And I'm joined by our latest best-selling LGBTQIA plus minus families author on Amazon, Lise Merle from Saskatchewan. Lise, how are you now that you're a number one seller?
Oh, Tamara Ugolini, it is just a delight to be here on what is turning out to be the best 3 weeks of my entire life. We reached number 4 on the children's charts. We're number 1 on the LGBTQ. Oh, look at this number 1 bestseller in children's books on self. You guys, this is new. This is I'm just seeing this for the first time.
I
It's
missed
just,
the S in
oh
there.
my God, you
Oh,
guys are
wow.
number
Self-esteem and self-respect, number
You
one.
guys, this is because of you. This is because of our Rebel fam. Just incredible. Like the week has just gone awesome. And I want to let you guys in on a little thing that we were doing just this morning. Me and
Mhm.
Sheila Gunn Reed and the Rebel News team here in Saskatchewan. I'm blustering into this program thoroughly unprepared because we were interviewing the premier of the province of Saskatchewan this morning. We are going to have the absolute best interview coming out for you guys. I think you're going to love it. I know you are. And I left my little rainbow book, Buck the Rainbow Unicorn, in the premier's office. So it couldn't be a better day. You guys are just making my life number one in children's for,
Woo!
for self-esteem. Like last night we were number I think 30 in children's book on self-esteem. So this is
Wow.
absolutely incredible. And thank you guys so much for being responsive and supporting this little book. This is the little book that could, and you're making it happen. So thanks so much, you guys.
And I think that there's still time to order your copy before Christmas. So
There
get it
definitely
at
is.
bucktherainbowunicorn.com.
Mhm.
We have the banner there so that you can find it. 25 bucks on Amazon and help it be an even better bestseller than it already is.
Yep.
What
Yep.
the 4.8 is that an 8 rating? There with a substantial number of views now, reviews, I should say. So look at that. Buck is just going. I love
Thank
to
you
see it.
guys. Well, thank you
Congratulations,
guys.
Lise. And thanks everyone for supporting Buck, the Rainbow Unicorn, and Lisa's writings. And get yours before Christmas because there you have it. Self-esteem and self-respect promoting children's book.
Number one, guys. Yeah, you have a couple days left. You can have it gift wrapped. You can send it to anyone in the nation.
There you
You
go.
have about 3 days left to print the book, and it's really a fabulous process that they have. Like Amazon has got it down, swish bang. The second you hit click, it hits the printer in your nearest Amazon print place, and it'll be at your house within 2 days. It's remarkable what they do on the print end. So yeah, bucktherainbowunicorn.com. Get yours
Get yours
before
today.
Christmas. Yeah.
All right. So today we, in addition to discussing Lisa's smashing success in the LGBTQI7 plus S sphere, we're also going to chat about Ford attacking Trump. Trump has just declared fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction. And then, of course, we have boomers still backing the liberals. But before we get into those topics and some of the fun clips that we're going to play for you today, I'll let you know that you can support us a few different ways if you feel so compelled, especially ahead of the holidays. If you're joining us on YouTube, you can give us a super chat. And so, through a small monetary donation, we will read your chat on air. And it's a great way for our audience to not only support our efforts and our work, but also to get involved with the show and have your comment, your tip, or your trick read on a broader platform. And then if you want to support us on the free speech platform, which we're fearless defenders of free speech and contrarian views, especially during the COVID handling and unfolding. You can join us over on Rumble and give us a Rumble rant. And so, same idea there, just depending on which platform you prefer. On YouTube, they do also offer the option of a super thanks. So, if you're joining us after we're already live and you just want to say thank you, please feel free to give us just a little small monetary nudge there. We really appreciate it. And I look forward to hearing some of your comments and reading them as we chat about the happenings in the world. And I'll just kick it off right off the bat with this one from Trump. This was late yesterday afternoon. He declared fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction under a new executive order. And so we'll play this clip, and then I actually wrote up a little piece on this earlier today that maybe I'll source back to, but let's listen to his words here in this clip.
That's why today I'm taking one more step to protect Americans from the scourge of deadly fentanyl flooding into our country. With this historic executive order I will sign today, we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, which is what it is. No bomb does what this is doing. 200 to 300,000 people die every year that we know of. So we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah, that they know of. And how many, the thing that gets me with fentanyl is now we have, so either way you look at it, pharma benefits because we also have naloxone, the Narcan kits.
Yes.
And so if it weren't for those nifty little inventions by the big pharma profiteers who obviously care so much about your health and well-being and not generating customers, I wonder how many more it would be at this point, because I hear repeatedly and perpetually kind of these incessant Narcan users who, you know, carry these kits, and they actually look to overdose at this point because you can only get so much more high each time. And so the addicts are after their next fix, and they actually, if there's a you know, the health units here locally anyway, they'll put out a warning, oh, there's an extra toxic pill or powder batch, thank you, yes, currently out on the streets. And people, the addicts, will actually go and look for that one because it's more likely to cause them to overdose and get them higher than they were the last time. And now they have this fail-safe mechanism called Narcan or naloxone, whatever. And so you know, these deaths would be, I would say, exponentially higher than they are if it weren't for that nifty little kit that everyone is urged to carry on their person these days. But this order basically empowers the federal agency, the feds, to treat this crisis. I mean, I would say with the urgency that it deserves and is much overdue, but also it will ramp up prosecutions, asset seizures, and military resources to combat things like cartels and these foreign suppliers. And Trump says it point blank there, like no bomb does what this is doing on the streets. And it's arguably worse in the United States than it is here in Canada. But here we've had at least and over 50,000 Canadians have died since 2016, with fentanyl being the largest source of those overdose deaths. And something that I say is not often reported on is the fact that this is disproportionately affecting young men who make up 3/4 of all of these fatalities, and then adults aged 30 to 39 represent more than 1/4 of these deaths, and that's according to Canada's own stats. And so we're not talking about how much this crisis is impacting young men primarily. And that is such a disservice. And then, you know, of course, here in Canada, the tariffs were a direct result of Trump saying, hey, Canada has a fentanyl crisis. It's coming into our borders, and I'm threatening to impose duties and tariffs onto Canada if they don't get this under wraps. And so what did Canada do? I mean, for a long time, they did nothing. But then eventually, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, in February of this year, he appointed former RCMP Deputy Commissioner Kevin Brosseau, the czar. We have a fentanyl czar. And, you know, he's pretty much just had a bunch of conversations. There's been a few busts at the border, and they've broken up maybe one or two of the super labs in British Columbia. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot that's been done to curb this flow of deadly illicit drugs in the streets. And then after months of really kind of just silence, Boisseau came out in October and admitted that the crisis was much larger and bigger than he had anticipated. So, like, isn't that just a breath of reassurance for all of us here?
Right. It bears mentioning that Kevin Brosseau came from like Fisheries and Oceans, or one of those agencies, and that he worked on the development of digital ID. So he went from
Hmm.
digital ID into the fentanyl czar, who was then overwhelmed with how big the fentanyl problem is. And what's really concerning for Canadians with Donald Trump naming fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction is that British Columbia in particular is going to feel the full brunt of this, because the United States government is going to throw everything they can at this problem, acknowledging that it is a massive issue. As a matter of fact, this is one of the issues that we talked about in our conversation this morning with Premier Scott Moe of Saskatchewan. Everybody is acknowledging that fentanyl is a massive issue in our society, that far too many people have died because of it, and that we have to get a handle on it. Do I think that the government of Canada is going to be able to get a handle on the problem that they created? Absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, if I was David Eby sitting in BC right now, I'd be real worried about how the Americans are going to fix this, because the vast majority of fentanyl coming into Canada is coming into BC ports. So that puts Donald Trump and the US government and the province of BC at direct odds. Of direct odds. You guys have had more than enough time to figure this out. Like, you guys are the ones that thought that safe supply was a good idea to keep people addicted, to keep people in a cycle of poverty, addiction, violence, homelessness, all of the things that go with addictions. And now you're saying that you guys are the ones to fix it? Baloney. Absolute baloney.
Yeah, worth mentioning that since 2017, the Liberals have committed over $1 billion to this idea of decriminalization and safer, right? It has to have that R on the end. It's not safe, it's safer supply of these highly addictive, highly deadly
Replacement
synthetic,
drugs. Yes.
yeah,
Replacement
synthetic
drugs.
opioids. And as Trump mentions also, that this just 2 milligrams, which is equivalent to 10 to 15 grains of table salt, can kill someone. And I would say even less than that if you don't have any tolerance at all, because there's a threshold there. And, I hear it on the streets when I'm out reporting, because
Sure.
it's a massive crisis here where I live. And I know that this is just kind of a microcosm of what's happening in the broader context of Canada and obviously the United States. But like the grains of salt can kill, especially a child, right? Because you have a lot of these addicts that are going out and using in parks, in playgrounds, in public restrooms. Here in
Mhm.
Coburg, we had security guards who were hired to man a warming room in the basement of a church, who inhaled fentanyl after someone was smoking it in the bathroom and had to be hospitalized. There was
You're
a police
kidding.
officer just this past summer. They still don't, the mechanism of conduct hasn't been fully disclosed, but I suspect they touched the person that they were
Sure.
arresting had fentanyl somehow on their skin or their paraphernalia. And the officer had to be taken to the hospital after. And so imagine what that would do to a child who came into contact with
Sure.
these substances at a park, at a playground, at a the library seems to be kind of like a congregation space for people to
Sure.
gather and use drugs in the washroom there. And I mean, a library is where children go to find books like Buck the Magic or Buck the Rainbow Unicorn.
Yes.
And now parents have to be aware that, hey, you don't know what you're going into when you go into a public restroom at your public library these days. So this is a massive problem, and it's affecting, the drug user advocates is what they're called because they refuse to call them addicts. They say, oh, well, we all have the right to use drugs and are most vulnerable of society. And I say, you know what? I think that we need to get back to the language where children and the elderly are the most vulnerable members of society, not people
Agreed.
who perpetuate and continue to make horrible life choices. This is
Agreed.
ridiculous.
Absolutely agreed. No, they deserve protection. People that are feeding an addiction cannot be trusted to make good decisions, and that's just the way that these things go. When you're consumed by an addiction, you'll do anything to feed that addiction. And what these people need is compassionate care. We got to get the butterfly nets out. We got to trap them in a butterfly net and drag them kicking and screaming off to treatment. Listen,
Yes.
give them the choice. I'm okay giving them the choice. You can either choose jail, okay, for your criminal activity, or you can choose treatment, in-person treatment. It's up to you, but you're not staying here. This is how we're going to get this, and this is how we're going to get these people back, because we can't forget that every single addict in Canada that has fallen down this slippery slope is somebody's son, is somebody's daughter, is somebody's mother or father, and these are people that have value and have the capacity to have a really, really good life if only they could get out of their addictive behaviors. And treatment is the only way to do that. This is humanizing them. I think we have to, and we also have to stigmatize drug use again. Like, no, fentanyl is bad, heroin is bad, cocaine is bad. Okay, we're not this wide embrasure of something. Whether it's proposed as like a party drug or a street drug or whatever, all of them are bad. All of them are bad. And we need to get back to that too.
That's what I keep saying. Bring back that early 90s ad where the person's cracking an egg over a hot frying pan. This is your brain on drugs. It's literally just scrambled eggs. Don't do drugs. Yeah, that prevention, those pillars of actual harm reduction, which we seem to have just forgotten about, which is actually stigmatizing, shaming, and getting ahead of that curve by directing children and young adults, hey, just don't do drugs.
I'm a big fan of bullying. Okay, I think we should bring bullying back. Yep. No, we got a public shaming in the town square. I'm a big fan of that. We should bring
shame actually works.
Societal shame actually does. We should be doing. Good thing we do a lot of that on this program.
That's right. But you know what actually also works is getting people out of poverty and not facilitating a mental health crisis by locking everyone inside their doors and closing all of their businesses for the better part of 2.5, 3 years. And so when the government, well, you can see the data shows that when COVID hit, the opioid use, I mean, every use, alcohol, obesity, any sort of addictive
mechanisms,
all of these coping, skyrocketed.
Trying to get away from life that really felt out of control at the time. And so we are dealing with the natural and predictable fallout of those decisions in seeing these drug usage stats in Canada, and that our government is giving it away for free.
Well, and when the government tells you that they care, I'm like, but you caused it. So make it make sense. Meanwhile, speaking of governments who claim to care, we have Ontario Premier Doug Ford. I don't own him. I don't. Oh, please. Why? When does Doug Ford get any better? I thought by now he would have learned to stop running his mouth, but he's not. He's now calling President Trump a tyrant as he addresses Canadians' supposed, and I say supposed, we'll get to that in a minute, supposed organic boycott of travel to the US. He's basically saying that snowbirds are no longer headed to Florida and the likes for their winter vacay because of Trump's tariffs and because he's a tyrant, I guess. So listen to this, Doug Ford.
Canadians are no longer flying to Florida. They're not. The snowbirds have basically, it's dried up. There's been an organic boycott of tourism into America. Do you support that? And are you going to go to Florida this year?
So let me tell you, it's going to be the first time I'm not going to Florida. But I talked to so many people. Don't let this guy Trump determine and ruin your life and everything. That's my personal choice. Maybe some families have gone to Florida their whole lives. Go to Florida. That's great. But I encourage you to stay here and support local tourism. But you can't let the one tyrant change our lives, right? You just can't let it happen. I'm doing it out of my own personal choice because I just can't do it. But don't let this guy change your lives. If you go down and you see, maybe their grandparents are down there. Maybe they're somewhere else. So we'll get through this. but they're hurting down there right now. They're hurting on all fronts. They're hurting on their economy. President Trump is at the lowest rating that any president has been in the first year, and God knows probably 100 years. So it's taking effect. And I always say, we love our American friends, and the Americans love Canadians. And there's just one guy, I just don't see eye to eye with us, President Trump. So we'll keep fighting. And I'll never apologize to that guy, ever. Keep giving it to him.
Yeah. Ford.
Morning,
Ford's
Premier
really-
Megan.
He's really giving it to him. All of a sudden, Ford seems to care about personal choice too. That seems funny considering he was the guy that instituted vaccine passports for everyone aged 12 and up to go and play hockey, for instance. But I love that this reached the desk of Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis. and he reposted fact checking Doug Ford, who appears to be more concerned with being a misinformation monger than factually correct. And Ron DeSantis writes, actually, we continue to break tourism records and win Stanley Cups. Just had to give that little extra elbows up in there. Because this is from August. I mean, this isn't like a breaking news story. This is going back where Florida is breaking its own record for 34.5 million visitors in the second quarter of 2025. And meanwhile, Premier Ford is trying to say that they're really hurting down there. And Ron DeSantis is like, not so much, actually. Let's look at the facts here because you're just spreading gossipy tabloid nonsense.
No,
and it's Trump Ford. Flip-flop Ford is what he's come to be known best for. And I'm here to see that them duke it out on social media.
Well, I
and
love
Ford
that,
be put in his place.
I love that Doug is projecting his own personal biases on the entire country when he
Right.
runs his mouth like this, because people aren't listen. The numbers of Canadians traveling to the United States for business or pleasure has decreased, but it has nothing to do with all of the reasons Doug Ford just gave us there. The reason we're not traveling to the United States is because of inflation and our poor dollar. When we go and exchange our money, and it's only worth 75 cents on every American dollar. Well, that makes it really hard for average everyday Canadians, Doug, to take a trip down south. But I certainly know several dozen people who are not doing their annual pilgrimage to Arizona and are not going to California because us Westerners, we go to the West Coast, right? But that's strictly because of the poor exchange and bad inflation and cost of living here. People just simply can't afford to go. And yet Doug is like, it's because of Trump and everything that Trump does. If I was petty and if I was Donald Trump, okay, I would write an executive order today banning Doug Ford from every stepping foot in Florida again. That's what I would do. I would literally do that. I'd be like, Doug, thanks so much for running your mouth on a national stage. You're not welcome here anymore, ever, for the rest of your life. The end. Ooh, I'd be petty.
Well, don't forget, Ford can just go up to his fancy Muskoka cottage too and get away. And
where he has sleepovers with Mark Carney. Yep.
Yeah, with their fireside chats and whispering sweet nothings in the wee hours of the evening. Yes, Doug Ford and Mark Carney. But Ford just someone needs to tell Ford to put a cork in it. I mean, I don't know how he's come this far and he's still trying to take swipes, calling President Trump a tyrant while you're literally taking an extended Christmas break amid like scandal after scandal with his industry minister, David Piccini. Ontario schools are an absolute mess. Less than half of grade 9 students are where they should be in terms of math and literacy. And what does the Ford government do? Well, he's just going to take an extended break until March 26th, I believe it is, 2026.
That long.
It is nuts. So when you want to talk about acting like a tyrant, well, Doug Ford is taking pretty extreme and aggressive steps to disavow accountability and disavow democracy. So I'd say that's acting like more of a tyrant than anything Donald Trump's doing.
Doug the thug.
Doug the tyrant thug. All right. Well, let's go to a quick ad break and then we will come back to chat about how the boomers are still loving the liberals.
Okay.
You like the hat? Me too. Same strong message about making Canada great again, but in a really cool color, black and gold. There's other colors available and it's an all Canadian site. So if you want to signal your tribe or trigger a liberal, go to mcgahats.ca today.
Oh, hi, everybody. Ezra Levant here from Rebel News. You know, it's a Christmas tradition here for me to take an entire show to answer your questions to me. Questions about literally anything. Sure, it could be about the news of the day, but you can ask me really anything about Rebel News itself, about our team, about our business, about our plans, even personal questions if you care. I mean, I'm sure there's some things I would decline to answer for privacy reasons, but I'll be as candid as I can be. Just go on over to lettersToEzra.ca and send in your questions, and I'll read them while wearing a Santa hat. My friend Sheila Gunn Reid is doing the same thing too. And at that same website, you can direct your letters to her also. So send me your friendliest or toughest questions, and I'll answer as many as I can fit into the show. Cheers. That's lettersToEzra.ca.
Gun bans make great distractions.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same
We
rhetoric.
will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted, while criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. Join us, Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
All right, we have the latest Abacus data polling, and it has Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives leading among every age demographic except for the boomers.
Ooh, those
40%.
pesky boomers.
Yes. And not, I should say, I have several boomers in my life, and I will
Yep.
say not all boomers. The conservative boomers are the best, and I'm lucky to have a few of them. But I don't know what's going on with the boomers. So you have 40% of 18 to 29-year-olds, which, you know, that's very close because 39 versus 40%. That one's very close. The 30 to 44, which I think are the ones likely facing the most
pressure.
The most pressure with the housing crisis,
Mhm.
but because they're old enough to have seen how it was before, right? To eight to 10 years ago, before the Liberal reign of terror.
When Canada was good and things were
when-
good and everything wasn't on fire. We
when they
have
could afford
memory
stuff.
of that. We have memory
Yeah.
of that. That's right. What the 60 and over cohort here, this 53% that are leaning liberal, are people that are insulated from the bad decisions of the Liberal government. And what I'm about to say, I'm not talking about the blue boomers, okay? I'm not talking about the 31% blue boomers there. What I'm talking about is those guys that are being influenced. So they're insulated from the bad decisions of the government, and then they're being inundated with mainstream media that tells them they're doing everything right. And you know, these boomers love to be told that they're being tough and they got their elbows up and they're, you know, there's a way to fight back against those blue conservatives. And I think as a society, what we all have to do is just go reprogram their remote controls. Okay, Canada, we're going to go into our red boomers' houses and accidentally deprogram their TV boxes from being able to view CBC, CTV, Global, MSNBC in the United States, CNN. This is what we must do. We must break them from their MSM watching habits so they can understand why the rest of the country is suffering the way they are. And so to help us combat this, please send your boomers a Rebel News clip. Okay, this is a challenge for our viewers. The more that we can talk to them on their level on our platform, the more they'll be able to understand why we're the place we are in the country. So yes, everyone, okay, we're all going to see family at Christmas. We're all going to be at our boomers' places at Christmas. So do take a moment to fiddle with their remote controls. They're not going to be able to fix it. They're boomers. Okay.
Yeah, well, that is the demographic that statistically is the one that watches CBC the most. They're the ones that still sit down for their nightly news and tune into this CBC to CTV. And so for all the people who say, oh, correlation doesn't equal causation, well, I don't know. The data is pretty strong there that 60 and over are the ones primarily watching and supporting the CBC. And they're the ones that are voting for the Liberals, who I might add, many are also pensioners, right? And so,
like I said, insulated
yeah,
from all of
exactly.
the bad decisions. They've got their pensions. Many of them have more than one. They have their pensions, they have their income, they have their fixed income, they have their house, they have their basic expenses covered. They might have a place in the States, they might have a holiday home. These are people that are not suffering because of liberal decisions and liberal policies. And those are the people that we must be able to talk to about this, because the young people are really, really struggling. It is not easy to be a young person in Canada right now. There are no jobs. There's no opportunity for growth. The old sort of Canadian dream about getting married, having children, buying a house, doing things on a specific pathway that leads PS to fulfillment and lifelong gratification aren't available to our young people, because the Liberals have destroyed any semblance of the Canadian dream by importing too many people all at once, destroying our federally funded services and institutions, and by ignoring the voices of Canadians like that sound like us.
Yeah, absolutely. Calling them radical extremists instead of being like, oh, you know what, those concerns sound pretty valid. Like, we should be able to afford to eat and heat our homes simultaneously, not have to choose one or the other. These aren't extreme things. These are things that 10 years ago, everyone had the pleasure of enjoying for the most part. And there was social safety nets in place if you needed a little bit of a helping hand or a hand up. And now those have all been strained thanks to horrible policy and the unmitigated influx of everyone into this country without proper infrastructure and planning to support it. So yeah, the whole thing is a mess, except for the boomers who, as Lise has so eloquently broken down, are insulated from all of it. But I would say a way to unleash the potential of Canada is, once again, capitalizing on our LNG, oil and gas. And here we have Danielle Smith, who's announced that she is open to shipping oil to the Pacific via the US Northwest. And Lise, I really liked your take on this on X. What did you say? A Saskatchewan-y?
Oh no, yeah, she pulled the old Saskatchewan.
Thank
She
you.
pulled the old Saskatchewan. So Danielle Smith, and actually credit to us on this program. For the last couple of weeks, we've been saying, Danielle Smith, like, one of the things that you can do, listen, the federal government doesn't want to play ball, fine. You take your ball somewhere else and play with somebody else. And you do like Saskatchewan did and go straight south. So our potash is going straight south to American ports in Washington. Our uranium is going straight south into American companies. And Danielle Smith is just getting on this bandwagon going, right? If BC is going to block us on one side and Ottawa is going to block us on the other, then we're going to take things into our own hands and go into the United States and develop our own. There are other options for her, though. There isn't just the United States. There's also a northern route up through the territories in the Yukon that could get us to Tidewater. But right now, it looks like the easiest way for Danielle Smith to get there is to do business with the United States. And good thing Danielle Smith spent all that time making key relationships with stakeholders in the United States, because she's going to face a lot, a lot fewer of the hurdles than, say, David Eby or Doug Ford would have to face, because she's put the time and effort into those relationships. Relationship building and network building in politics is an absolutely huge part of it. And this is something that Danielle Smith does better than just about everybody in the country. So this is excellent news for the people of Alberta. It gives them, I do believe that this gives Alberta hope, but unless we see movement on this, like right now, we're still going to see separatist sentiments growing in Alberta. Yeah, because the people of Alberta just see that there is no winning. The people of Alberta and Saskatchewan and the West just acknowledge that there is no winning when the federal government is involved, because wherever the federal government is involved, they screw it up.
Yeah, Danielle Smith's diplomacy is unmatched.
Yeah.
And you can really see that. I mean, yeah, the feds screwed up. Look at whatever Premier Ford is doing. And none of them, no one else is really even making a blip on the map anywhere with anything other than destruction and devastation.
Yes.
So yes, Danielle Smith with her diplomacy and being this level-headed, reasonable, rational leader, she's doing great things. And it's so frustrating to see her stonewalled every step of the way by these weak men who just like can't help themselves but throw themselves in the middle of it. And whatever that signing was, the ceremonial, all for show
MOU
theatrics, thank you, was 2 weeks ago.
Memorandum of underachievement, Jeffrey Rath calls it, and I can't call it anything else at this point. But she nobody does it better. When Danielle Smith gets stonewalled, she just finds a way around the stonewall. That's it. Like, she doesn't sit still on nothing. As a matter of fact, I've watched Danielle Smith's government on a multitude of different issues being notified of the issue and have policy to combat it within the week. Okay, this woman doesn't let no moss grow on her rolling stone. Okay, she is giving her at foot. So there's a price to be paid for having the biggest balls in Canada, but big risk comes with big reward. And I really hope for that for Danielle Smith. Like, she's just a treasure. So look at her, she's just adorable. I love everything about her. She's just
Even
such
in
a
that
honey.
Even though this was all just theatrics, and I don't think that anything will come of it, she once again displayed her capabilities as a leader. Mark Carney's kind of looking to her like, okay, what do we do? Where do we sign? How do we do it?
She's a stateswoman, and I think that she gave Mark Carney the benefit of the doubt. He's a new guy. Justin Trudeau was entirely unresponsive to the issues of the West. He's a new guy that's at least trying to have conversations, and I think Danielle Smith was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. But when the Liberals proposed legislation that was based on the actual wording of the MOU, and the Liberals shot it down, was when Danielle Smith went, right, they're just in it for show. And this is what we're all learning together, guys, is when what Mark Carney says in British Columbia or what Mark Carney says in Alberta and Saskatchewan is a lot different than what Mark Carney says when he gets back to Ottawa. And we're seeing the duplicity of the Liberals. And it's real important that we keep calling them out on this, because we should not be having a tariff war with the United States. We should not be having a trade war with our closest friends and partners, and yet leaving it up to Mark Carney. Mark Carney would rather have us become European than get things right with the people that live closest to us, our biggest consumers. And so, when Canadians ask, has Mark Carney shown himself to be trustworthy in fulfilling his promises? I don't think that we can say yes.
No, he's not lived up to any of them thus far. I would say hands down, elbows tucked, absolutely not. He campaigned, the entire campaign promise was to be tough with Trump on tariffs, and that has gotten us literally nowhere except more tariffs.
Well, we're just digging a hole. We're just digging a
Yeah.
hole. And then you put into play all of the other pressures that are stressing the Canadian economy. Tariffs from other countries, the Chinese EV tariff. This is decimating Western Canadian canola growers. Why have we not dealt with these issues? It can't just because there aren't any votes to pick up in the West. Okay, that can't be it. What it looks like and feels like to me is that there is a very close relationship between the Liberal Party of Canada and the Chinese government, which isn't going to serve us in any meaningful way either. As a matter of fact, I think that it's intrinsically harmful to Canadian culture and society. Just the Liberals putting a great deal of emphasis on that relationship.
Well, Trudeau just was so giddy and loved their idea of a basic dictatorship. And I mean, didn't he prove that that was the trajectory and the route that he wanted to take throughout his tenure as prime minister?
When
So
they tell you who they are, believe them, Canada.
that's right.
Believe them.
That's right. Speaking of telling you who they are, we have a report from CSIS just this morning, our Canadian intelligence agency, saying that we don't have an imminent threat of attack in Canada in the wake of the Australian terrorist attack, which they've called a shooting here, on Bondi Beach. So the Canadian Security Intelligence Service said Monday it sees no indication of a specific threat in Canada following the mass shooting at a Hanukkah celebration in Australia, even as it warns of the realistic possibility of an extremist attack on the Jewish community here. So there's a lot of double speak happening in that sentence.
We don't really think that it's a threat, but it could be a threat, and we're really not sure. Listen,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, considering
Oh
how
my
much
gosh.
emphasis CSIS has put on DEI in the last 10 years, that they're a completely reliable place for Canadians to find pertinent information on this. But I bet you that if we checked in with the Australian intelligence services, they would have said the same thing last week and actually furthered this story. I just am putting it in the group chat. The CBC went and did a thing that I want to call them out on. So the CBC morning edition, sorry guys, I'm just pulling this on you live. CBC morning edition in Saskatchewan with host Adam Hunter had a guest on, okay, in the immediate wake of the Bondi Beach massacre, we're going to call it, with with this guy from the University of Regina, and this guy is promoting his book. In 2023, police reported hate crimes in Canada were up 32%. The same year, both the number of Islamophobic and anti-Semitic hate crimes had risen. University of Regina professor Amin Asfari has been exploring how Islamophobia leads to hate crimes and how to mitigate those in his book. And then it says the title of his book. So what they're actually doing here is they're lumping the victims and the aggressors into the same pile and being like, well, can anybody do something about this? Maybe CBC Regina, you could have waited just to be like, read the room. Did you not see what just happened in Australia? And this doesn't help. Conflating who the victims are and who the aggressors are and force teaming them into the same boat does not work here. Okay, because there is only one group of people here who are shooting innocent people in public spaces. Okay, it's not the Jews. Okay, it's not the Jews. It is the other side. So this is the last time, or this is an inappropriate time for the CBC to be talking about Islamophobia in any case, but immediately in the aftermath of what happened in Australia, it's especially disgusting. So thanks for letting me tee off on the CBC, guys.
Yeah, it's no surprise that the CBC is just completely tone deaf at this point. They obviously don't represent the larger and broader context of Canadians, and that's why their watch rates are abysmal and primarily only the boomers. But I can't get over this CSIS report because it warns right in there that holiday events, including Hanukkah celebrations, will likely remain an aspirational target across the violent extremist spectrum,
Yeah.
intending to attack Western interests, select religious and ethnic communities, and related emblematic sites. But then they say, oh, there's no threat. Don't worry. There just might be one.
Well, but that's what they kind of have to say. You know what I mean? That's what they kind of have to say, and it's their default position that there is no risk to public safety. But we saw violent Islamists targeting Christmas markets for the last decade. So that they have now projected that onto Hanukkah and other events that are dear to people of different faiths is not a surprise. Why isn't CSIS and the Australian intelligence agency on top of this, knowing that this was the direction it was going? What was happening in Europe 10 years ago is happening here now because we've been importing the same problematic people. And when we import people that are culturally and societally incompatible with Western civilization, this is the predictable and unsurprising result. Like like we should, none of us should be surprised at what happened, and all of us should be holding the feet of the people responsible in the fire for it. The public did not ask for this. We did not consent to this. Nobody said, hey, do you want your entire society turned upside down to appease this group of people who are incompatible with us? Absolutely not. Whoever was responsible for this needs to lose their jobs and be voted out of positions of power, because obviously they've led us into a really, really dangerous world.
And MP Roman Baber in Toronto, he kind of passive aggressively, I would say, called out some of those people responsible for proliferating this kind of rhetoric. This clip here actually comes from Karima Saad. And so
our friend Karima Saad, I have another story
Yes.
about her later. Yes, go on.
Our friend. So she posts on X here that that Roman Baber lays his thoughts bare that politicians engage in blood libel by accusing Israel of genocide, and that includes a few unnamed individuals sharing the stage at the Mel Lansman Square, which he says fuels hatred against the Jews. I mean, it's a 3-minute clip. You can go watch it if you'd like, but I don't think we have time to play it here. But he also says it's time to give political cover to police so they can do their jobs and defend the Jewish community. And then the clip that I do want to play is I think it's about a 30-second one here, and we can probably even just show it on the screen. So just after he gives this address on the stage, you see the Toronto Mayor, Olivia Chow. There she is in the background. She's approached by some unnamed and unidentified person on the stage. And then she just kind of slithers away.
Well, she should, because she spent the last 2 years ignoring the problems that have been slowly simmering to a boil in Toronto. So it's kind of, it's kind of tone deaf for Olivia Chow to show up at this point and pretend like she's concerned, like pretend like she's interested in the safety and well-being of the Jewish community of Toronto, when she's done everything to ignore what's been happening on her own streets for years and years and years.
Yeah,
real rich.
I'm just trying to look up if there's any clips of her at the Palestinian flag raising ceremony, which happened just 4 weeks ago, I might add.
I'm at the point of making these I'm at the point of making these people pick a side. Whose side are you on? You don't get to go to the Palestinian flag raising and then come to the menorah lighting and pretend like everything is just hunky-dory. Sorry,
Exactly.
I know you represent a diverse city of a bunch of diverse people, but pick a side, okay? We have one side that's bad and evil and arguably not good for Canadian society, and we have one that's lived with us in peace for the last 150 years. Pick a side. Oh, what is this?
Yeah, this is her. We played this clip yesterday, just pretending to care.
Right, she's playing both sides of the coin, and it's gross and duplicitous. We should expect more of our elected officials.
And all of this is happening while just today, just this morning, there was a mass terror plot attack foiled in Poland. So a planned, oh, my computer's gone all
Oh
wonky. A
no.
planned Islamic State mass terror attack at a Christmas market in Poland has been foiled, according to officials. Polish security services have detained a student suspected of preparing the attack. I'm not, my pronunciation is horrible.
Jacek Dobrzynski.
Thank
Yes,
you, Lise.
a spokesperson for Poland Special Services said that Matus W., a student at the Catholic University of Lublin, wanted to commit an attack using explosives and planned to join a terrorist organization. So Poland has done a phenomenal job at safeguarding their culture and their country. They're not taking no immigrants. Like absolutely not. Poland is holding down the fort. And so that they uncovered this just kind of shows that they're on high alert. But again, with the Christmas market attacks, like this is what happens in Europe. This is what happens in Europe. In Australia, they shoot up the beaches. In Israel, they shoot up music festivals. In Canada, what's it going to be?
A scary thought indeed. And then, it doesn't offer very much reassurance when it's the Toronto Police Service who are like, we're going to increase our presence at some of these events in certain communities. The same guys that said that the October 7th Hamas attack brought more people to Islam.
Like that the police are wholly dedicated to DEI. I read yesterday, I don't know if I have it on my phone anymore. The New South Wales police, whose response to the Bondi Beach massacre was abysmal at best, and there's going to be a reckoning about that. But they're wholly committed to DEI over there at the New South Wales Police Force, just like they are in every police force across the Western world. But they actually had a rapid response team with people that, linguistically diverse police officers. Well, how those linguistically diverse police officers in your rapid response team, how did they do dealing with two active shooters? Like, were they able to do their job at their best? And if you look at the maps of the Bondi Beach massacre and where the police station is, it's a 3-minute walk. It's literally a 1.5-minute jog from where this was going on. It took them 22 minutes, like maybe less with the diversity hires in policing and more actual public safety. You know what I mean? A concentration on public safety. Maybe that's what we should concentrate on.
Absolutely. I saw one of the female cops was basically like cowering in behind a vehicle and just refusing to go out and disarm the active shooter. Women are built different, and we need to stop living in this la la land that gender is a social construct, because it's not. And there's a reason why we have masculine men and feminine women.
Amen.
And this case in point, you see it unfold in these situations where you need strong, brave men to go out and face an imminent threat. And if they're not there to take that on, the society suffers and crumbles.
Exactly this. And did I hear correctly that the hero who disarmed the shooter at Bondi Beach was actually shot by police? Like, you know what I mean? As these events sort of unfold, you get waves of information. You're not quite sure where things are landing, but here we are hailing him as a hero in the hospital, and then it turns out that he was shot by police. Like, make it make sense, you guys. Make it make sense.
Yes, please somebody send us a super chat and make it make sense.
Yes.
Speaking of which, we do have a few, so I'll get to them before I do want to hit this Black Locks piece though before we wrap up.
Yeah, please.
But JP Alberta First gives $20, thank you very much, and says Trump declared fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction. The claim of weapon mass destruction existence justified invasion of Iraq. USMC, that's the trade agreement between US, Mexico, Canada, doesn't need Congress okay to be deployed. Look out, British Columbia and Mexico. Smith's efforts at the border was a really smart move.
Agreed. Agreed.
She
Good,
took
great
action before
comment.
anyone else.
Yeah.
More
So did
security,
Saskatchewan.
drones.
So did Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan started the Saskatchewan Marshal Service. We have border agents that are being, like, conservation officers that are being redeployed to the border to make sure that this is out of control. And Saskatchewan and Alberta got their pants on before the federal government even started
Stepped
thinking
out of
about.
bed.
That's right. That's exactly right. Great comment though, bud. Thank you.
Yes, and then we have Silverfeet 1280 gives $5. Thank you very much. Page 13 and 14 of Buck, the rainbow unicorn, brought tears to my eyes. Buck is
I
very lucky to have people who really care for it.
wait, I
Him,
have to go to
care
see
for
what
him.
page that is. Oh, it is. Oh, thank you, buddy. Thank you, Silverfeet. It is page 13 and 14 is a really special page in the book. Thank you,
I
buddy.
had a crazy idea, Lise. I think that you should read your book and we'll display the pages and have it as like a Christmas buffer video in between that week that you're not really sure if it's the new year yet or if you're still in the Christmas mayhem. I would love to see you read your book in a video and just share it out with the world. Now that you're #1 bestseller, I think that it would be a real hit.
Well, you know what I am planning on doing, you guys, is I am planning on doing a video um with the reviews that you've left on Amazon. They are making my life, you guys. So look forward to a Christmas video with me not crying, okay? Not crying, but with
Happy
this little
tears.
book. Yeah, I mean, this is just beyond my wildest dreams, but it's really important that people understand that the book isn't, the book was designed to do exactly what it's doing, and that it's resonating in the way that it is. Grandmas are buying the book for their grandbabies. Parents are buying the book for their babies. It is the praise that has been heaped onto this little project is extraordinary, and nobody could be more grateful. So thanks so much, guys. I will stop crying. Okay, I will. I'm just going to pull it together. But we are going to do a Buck the Rainbow Unicorn Christmas project, and I'll let you I'll let you know what happens. Now they started and won't stop. You guys just
They're happy tears.
go to,
Happy
yes, they
tears
are.
of
Go
joy
to
for our
Tamara.
best-selling LGBTQIA plus -7 author. I can't even keep track anymore. So I just wanted to make a mention before we wrap things up of this article that comes from Blacklock's Reporter, where the federal government has officially sealed the 215 mass graves claim records. So the Department of Crown Indigenous Relations is sealing all reports filed by the Kamloops British Columbia First Nation that was paid to exhume the purported graves of 215 children. That's what they claimed at the Indian Residential School in Kamloops. Confidential information. The department wrote in denying an access to information request for the records. So this comes as the Kamloops Shushamwick First Nation received $12.1 million
It's a lot of pennies,
in
you
taxpayer
guys.
funding.
A lot of pennies.
Yes,
Which
for
was
the
Mhm.
exhumation, sorry, of these remains.
Yep.
And forensic DNA testing after they announced in 2021 that they discovered this mass grave, and then, ensued all of these reconciliation efforts and these millions of dollars of funding, but no remains have been recovered to date, and it's not clear where any of that $12 million ended up.
Well, we can make some inferences here. If they made good use of that $12 million, they would have no problem releasing the documents, and refusing to
Yes.
fulfill the Freedom of Information Act request from a citizen to a government is anti-democratic in itself, but it also shows how hard the bureaucracy will work to keep their dirty deeds hidden. Okay, the bureaucracy does not want people like Rebel News to come into the information where they would have spent that $12 million, because certainly it wasn't spent where it was intended. Okay, there has been no exhumations at Kamloops School, and yet here's an entire community, an entire industry that's popped up and said, you may not question us. You may not ask where your tax dollars went. and you may not have a dissenting opinion in this because it is just so sacred. It is just so sacred to our community. Baloney. If taxpayer funds were spent on it, there should be no. I am a information absolutist. I believe there should be no secrets between a government and the citizens that elect it, nor any part of the bureaucracy. But this just goes to show us how completely broken Canada is in this regard, and how the rights of minorities can trump the rights of the electorate when the government and the minorities work in concert the way they did in this regard. Just incidentally, I want to tell you about a social media post that the government of Saskatchewan put out, and I thought it was a real interesting timeline the way it came out. So the government of Saskatchewan came out and said, today is the whatever anniversary of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, and we've done all of these things that were recommended in the the calls to action, right? The calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation report. And they got absolutely roasted in the comments. I think that Canadians by and large are feeling Indigenous fatigue, truth and reconciliation fatigue. We've seen more of our money. Here we go. Yep. As Canada marks 10 years since the TRC's final report, the government of Saskatchewan has released Dayagen Togada. Okay, Amani, I don't know what this means. 10 years of action supporting truth and reconciliation in Saskatchewan. Guess who doesn't ask for this and doesn't want this, and who is actually labeling it as pointless? The people of Saskatchewan. We're just done. We're just done with this. So
yeah,
the truth, what is the Mark Twain? A lie can make it halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on. And truth and reconciliation in Canada is a great example of that.
And it's just the truth and reconciliation industry at this point. I mean, $12 million. And as a part of the mandate of receiving those funds, they were supposed to hand over activity progress reports. And now those are sealed. We don't have any. There's no record of any ever existing. And apparently we'll never get them because they've been cited as being confidential information. But I find it so odd, just funny that these were called mass graves in 2021, fueled, a national crisis of that required magnitudes of millions of dollars in funding. And then quietly, the band suddenly starts referring to these mass graves as anomalies.
The whole thing feels so contrived. Now that we have the benefit of retrospect, we can look back at it and say, this is the series of events that led us up to where we are right now. And had they not called it mass graves, we wouldn't have had the visceral reaction in Canadian society that we had. We wouldn't, the First Nations bands that were claiming victimhood in this wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. But because it was contrived, and this is my claim, that the entire thing was contrived to find a way for the government and a minority to work together against the best interest of the people and our society. That's what happened. They lied to us and then tried to create a story that would back up their lie. But good thing for us, we have people like Drea Humphrey, who gets her little teeth in a story and won't let go. By the way, Drea Humphrey won our People's Choice Award at our Christmas party. Okay, nobody deserves that more than her. She did some really heavy lifting on the story when it was drastically unpopular to do so. She is extraordinarily brave. And as long as we got people asking questions, we'll discover the truth. The truth has a way of coming out in the end, of coming out in the wash always. So no matter how they try and hide their documents, no matter how they try and hide their money, we're going to find out eventually, Canada, because we got the right people asking the questions.
But that's why they want to criminalize your speech and call you a residential school denier and make residential school denialism like actually a hate crime, so that you can't ask those questions and we can't have these conversations. So let's just make sure that that never happens. Now, I wanted to just quickly run through We got a note of clarification from JP. Alberta First gives another $10. Thank you. And says USMC is United States Marine Corps. Okay, so that changes. I'm sorry. I misread that. The original comment was around Trump declaring fentanyl weapon of mass destruction. And then JP Alberta First wrote USMC, which I incorrectly related to the trade agreement instead of the U.S. Marine Corps. So he
right.
says USMC, the U.S. Marine Corps, doesn't need Congress okay to be deployed. So yes,
Interesting.
that completely changes the comment. Thank you for your clarification. I apologize. And yeah, I'm really interested to see what is happening today with the government, if they've been questioned about any of this, if any scrums happened, to see what kind of ramifications this designation is going to have for Canada, as we've been a key player in this crisis perpetuating into the United States. So
You know,
yes.
I've often, hoped and wished just privately that something would happen to the Lower Mainland. You know what I mean? Just, I wish something would happen. Like maybe it would fall off into the ocean, or how else do you clean it up? And now we might have our answer. We might have big guns coming to help.
And Alberta Dawn gives $5 and says that a rabbi interviewed in Australia yesterday said if the attack had happened in Israel, the attacker would have been shot immediately because citizens are allowed to carry guns.
Right.
Shootings in gun-free zone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talked about that yesterday on the stream also, the inability and disarming of not only citizens, but also security, police. How do you keep people safe in that situation when no one else is allowed to carry guns except for the bad guys who are always going to find a way to get the guns, no matter how many regulations and rules you put on the lawful legal gun owners. All right, we have a small daily dose of cringe to share with you. Oh, Lise.
This is one of my favorites. No, this is my favorite. This is my favorite segment of every show, and this one will not disappoint everybody. Let us feast our eyes on Alberta's Janice Irwin. Okay, this is from our friend Leviathan on X. It was Team Canada versus USA for women's hockey in Edmonton, yet NDP politician Janice Irwin is rooting for Go Gays Go at the game.
All that's missing is her keffiyeh. Does she even identify as a woman anymore? I'm not sure.
Listen, hey, Janice, I have a book for you for Christmas, okay? It's called Buck the Rainbow Unicorn. Yeah, you would love it. Look at the cover, Janice. Okay, this is basically you on the cover. How embarrassing. Can we depoliticize sports? I'm so tired of sports having special theme days and their Pride Hockey Day and their their pink days of caring and their orange days of caring.
The bullying stuff. And
you know what I'm here to do? Like at a hockey arena, I call hockey arena boy aquariums because that's what it is. We just all go and watch the boys work in their aquarium. But I'm there to watch gladiators fight it out. I like it. That's why I like sports. Not because of this. Janice Irwin is, look at her. I mean, Gary Busey couldn't do this pose any better. This is Alberta's Gary Busey, side by side of Janice Irwin and Gary Busey right now, just to delight our viewers, because you couldn't tell them apart. I don't think they're the same person. Has anybody seen Janice Irwin and Gary Busey in the same room before? I bet not.
Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel. I didn't notice the flags on the corners at first. I just saw the Go Gays Go and ... and Canada. Like, why? I just don't know why.
Must you bring that to the hockey game? She actually had to go through security with a whiteboard to take her selfie. Like, Janice, how pathetic. Honest to God. Like, honest to God. We can tell you're not
Be
there
right back.
Just pulling out my whiteboard with their knife shoes and their sticks. Okay.
Well, actually, this is a good point, because she would have had to bring all of these different colored markers also. Otherwise, you would probably smudge your board.
Like, but that's Janet. Like, this is what's important to Janice Irwin.
Priorities
is performing. You know what I mean? She's there. She could have enjoyed the game. She could have posted a selfie, but she needed to make it political. And this is what I'm sick of in our society. Absolutely tired of.
Yeah.
Like Mark Carney at the Grey Cup, also tired of that.
It gets worse
Use
the more I look at it.
using sports as a political tool, hate it. Let the people play.
Yeah, and just stay home, or just don't make yourself known. All right. Well, with that, we're about 10 minutes past the hour. Do we have any super chat? I think we're all caught up. Well, thanks everyone for joining in, pitching in, for issuing your points of clarification on the USMC without the A on the end. And there will be a same Buffalo panel joining tomorrow, same time, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern.
Cannot wait.
So make sure that you're coming back for that. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lise, for joining as your regular Tuesday spot. And I'm so thrilled about your book. And I look forward to you being #1 for all children's books everywhere.
That's the goal, fam. That is the goal.
World.
We want it #1 on the children's charts. That's our goal. Oh, and actually, just before we leave today, you guys, last night Sheila Gunn Reid had a sleepover like besties do, and we really recommend that adult women get together and just visit for an evening. And we found that both Sheila Gunn Reid's book, her brand new release about the case for Confederation, and Buck the Rainbow Unicorn are on Amazon's hot new release 100 list together. Me and Sheila Gunn Reid, 2 Rebel News babes with 2 published authors with Rebel News, have both of their books on Amazon's hot new releases. Feel free to mosey over there and search for our books. And you guys, thanks so much for your support. Look at this. Yeah,
there it is.
It's just incredible. So
that's awesome.
I'm gonna stuff a bunch of stockings with the green one at the bottom. Like everybody I know is going to get one of Sheila Gunn Reid's books. So, but thanks so much for supporting us. We couldn't be doing this kind of work if it weren't for the support of our viewers. And we're just so grateful to you guys. So thanks so much for having our backs in this.
That's right. And thanks everybody for making sure that all the visuals are there, all the links are clickable, and that you can find us same time and place also tomorrow. So come back then. And until that time, stay sane and question everything.
Hey everyone, Sheila Gunn Reid here, and I'm thrilled to introduce the 2 books that I just wrote, and I use that word pretty loosely. Meet The Case for Confederation, Alberta's Compelling Reasons to Stick Around, and The Case for Confederation, Saskatchewan's Compelling Reasons to Stick Around. 2 beautifully bound volumes packed with every strong promise and well-researched argument for why Alberta and Saskatchewan should stay within the confines of Canada. And by packed, I mean the pages are blank. These 2 books are completely empty because when I went looking for Ottawa's case to keep the prairies, or rather for us to stay, that's exactly what I found. Nothing. Flip through either book and you'll reach the same conclusion I did. If the federal government has a convincing argument, it didn't make it into the pages of my book or into reality for that matter. These books will make the perfect gift for your favorite prairie firebrand, your CBC-soaked Liberal co-worker, or anyone who still insists equalization is fair. Or how about for that guy who yells elbows up every time pipelines or canola or potash comes up. And look, even if Ottawa won't offer Alberta or Saskatchewan much, these blank books can, because they're lined. They double as notebooks, instantly making them more useful than any federal promise since 1905. Get your copies today at thecaseforconfederation.com. Order now to get yours in time for Christmas. Again, that's thecaseforconfederation.com.